Hello, everybody. Hello. Are you not entertained? Is that not why you are here? Steve, what's up, my friend? Hello, everybody. Timed that literally as soon as I said hello to everyone. So hi, everybody from Steve's stream. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm doing okay. Feel like this is going to be a better go of things than Thursday. Thursday I was supposed to do this particular stream. Dun, dun. Bum, ba-dum, bum, bum. Esophagus. Thank you. And I hope you have a good one. And welcome to the adventure. So for those of you that don't know, my name is Shane. If you've been around Steve's chat, I'm the guy that constantly throws weird facts and is always trying to like fill up the wall of text and constantly argues about like, oh, that's illogical and oh, that's not true sociologically. Yeah, so that's me, but this is me here, and the show is called Adventures in History. I teach college, and I have degrees in history and sociology, and studied religion and archaeology and a whole bunch of other ologies and stuff like that. So I'm kind of a weird mix of the liberal arts crammed into one tiny little head. But yeah, I don't really like the fact that history has a kind of a negative perception in many people's lives. I think that a lot of people don't really have good experiences with history, a lot to do with like the teachers that they've had that have been less than exciting or perhaps super duper biased. And so what we do here is we try to have fun, we try to goof off, and we talk about stuff that is historical in nature, but I mean, we'll end up chasing a tangent somewhere, and we'll end up like talking about some movie or some Star Wars something or some book that I've read or something like that. Well, Rosemary, that's very, very kind. I appreciate that. So let me say hello to everybody. I don't think I've said hello. So hey, Steve, thank you so much for that raid. As always, I really do appreciate the support that you have offered to me, not just in my personal world, but also here on stream. He's a good guy. If you don't already follow Steve's sketches, you really should. And I mean, I guess I could just go on about that, but you know how it goes. Nixolotl is in the group. Hey, Nix, how's it going? Hope everybody has already followed Nixolotl, who is an artist here on Twitch. You need to go give them a follow. Heavy, what's up? Martest, hello, hello, hello. Only okay. Yeah, it's been a long day, and I do occasionally do some Gunpla stuff. We're currently working on this big chunky boy, which is the Zeong from the original Mobile Suit Gundam show. So if you've ever seen that, you know that the big bad at the end is this giant hovering thing that looks like Rosie the robot from Jetsons. And we've been working on building that for the last few weeks. Did a little bit of that on Sunday. Shane has small head, confirmed. Yeah, it's about proportional to my body, but I don't know. It just looks weird sometimes when you see all this other stuff around me. So tangents, us. Hey, Shmall Knight, good to see you. Welcome in. Who else we got? Lumpy is here. Oh, Lumpy, hello. Lumpy Dragon Potato, good friend, hangs out in my chat quite a bit, and I hang out in his chat whenever I can, usually on weekend mornings, as he builds Dragon Song, this amazingly elaborate Minecraft world that is full of dragons and lore and whimsy. These are all good things, and you should go give Lumpy a follow and hang out in Lumpy's room. Yeah, so last week I had a computer meltdown, and the world sort of stood on its ear for a little while, and I had to build stuff again, and I had to reinstall drivers and uninstall things, and then I spent about an hour and a half or so digging around in tutorials that OBS doesn't want you to see, because when stuff like dropping frames happens, OBS says, it's certainly nothing to do with our software, it has to do with your computer connectivity issues. And so I had to dig through all of that stuff, and I hope that I've got everything going more or less okay. I did some Gundam streaming on Sunday, and it looked like everything was all right. So hopefully we won't have a problem getting through today's topic, which is Eastern Rome. If this is your first time in, here's what we kind of do. Usually this stream would have been on Thursday night, and on Thursday nights we are covering history in chronological order, and we started with the dawn of humanity way back when we were not even Homo sapiens, and we have moved all the way up through, we go through what I have started calling phases, which I stole from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like Phase 3 and Phase 4. We are currently in Phase 10, which is not the card game. Basically, we pick a given period of time and then we look at snapshots of different parts of the world during that time. And this is sort of designed to try to give us a more continuative view of what's going on in global events. So in this phase, we've talked about Japan and India and China. We actually had a couple streams on China because at this point in history, China's broken up into multiple parts. And we've talked about people moving around on the steppe, and we've talked about African people, and now we're going to talk about Roman people. And we're going to look specifically here at what we call the Eastern Roman Empire. And we're looking during a period of time that stretches from the year 400 to the year 500. This is what we call the 5th century of our current era, or AD, whichever one of those you want to use. And this is a pretty sort of pivotal time. A lot of people know a little bit about Rome, and a lot of people talk about the fall of Rome a whole lot and what happens there. And this is going to be half of the story. And we'll get the other half on Thursday. And it's actually sort of decent or workable that I didn't get to stream last week, because now we get to do the two halves of Rome basically in the same week. So tonight we'll do what's going on in the Eastern Empire and some of the stuff that happens between the two. And then on Thursday night we'll do the Western Empire and some more stuff about, you know, some interaction between the two halves of the Roman Empire. Hey, Agracus, what's up? Good to see you. So one thing that it is important for us to realize before we sort of dive into this particular division here, East Rome and West Rome, is that the people of the time very much were willing to accept the fiction that Rome had not divided, right? Rome was still one empire. It just had two emperors and two capitals, but it was still one empire. And this is a fiction that people during this 5th century are going to be more or less willing to support, is a good way of saying it. And there's a kind of a common conception that Rome fell in the West. You know, we're going to talk about the collapse of Rome, and here we talk about, you know, how Rome in the West collapsed. But that's not really accurate. Half of the Roman Empire fell to barbarians, but the other half of the Roman Empire is going to continue all the way up through 1453 with the end of the Constantinople siege of, you know, Mehmet II with all of the Ottoman people. That's kind of going to be the end of Rome. And then if you're, you know, looking at it from a certain way and you believe certain viewpoints, Moscow is the third Rome. And that brings us to a topic, of course, which is big in the world right now, the whole Europe thing, and with Russia and Ukraine, which is something that I might end up doing some sort of special episode about. I've just sort of been trying to think about that in the last actually couple of hours today, especially after hanging out in Steve's chat today and seeing how much misinformation is still flying around out there about this. I might end up doing something that's kind of like a special, not Adventures in History, but Adventures in the News kind of story, where I give a little bit of background and we talk about the actual problem logically and organized. So that might be something coming up pretty soon. I don't know when I'm going to have time for that. My schedule at work is going to be ridiculously busy in the next few days. History in the making, indeed. Indeed, it very much is. You take the waifu one back? Okay. I mean, I'll take it, but whatever. Okay, so let's talk about Rome. And we are going to be focusing on the eastern section of the Roman Empire, but let us remember that Rome was one country. It just so happens to be split in half. And this is going to happen with the Emperor Theodosius I. Theodosius I is the last Roman emperor to rule a unified Roman empire. And when he is old and is about to die, he makes a rather fateful decision to split the empire between his two kids. He has two sons, Arcadius and Honorius. Ooh, wrong button. And he is going to basically, well, there's a lot of debate about exactly what this particular decision ends up doing. Some people are going to say that this is the decision that sort of ruins the western half of the empire. Other people are going to say that this was the only decision that he could potentially make, given the situation and the size of the problems in the empire. Either way, it is a fateful decision, because Rome at this point is going to be split, and the capital here of the east is at Constantinople, and the capital here at the west is technically the city of Rome. But there's going to be a little bit of movement about where the actual capital is. Sometimes it's up here at Milan. Other times it might actually be out here on the border. So one of the things that we do want to look at here, geographically speaking, are these boundaries. So if you see right here, this boundary right here is the Rhine River. And I'll type this here in chat. The Rhine River running through what is modern-day France. And then you see this big river right here. This is the Danube, the blue Danube. So lovingly recorded in classical music. Anyway, these are two very important boundaries of the Roman Empire. And the Danube River and the Rhine River are part of what the Romans call the limes of Rome. And I know it's spelled limes, but it's not pronounced limes, it's Latin. You say limes. And these are the boundaries of the Roman Empire. And specifically, these two rivers are very important because they are hard to cross in most instances. They're both going to be very broad. They're both quite swift in current. There are only a few bridges over both, and Rome tends to hold the bridges themselves. And this is going to be a big deal because these are going to be things that get talked about a lot in the next couple of streams. All right, so here's the empire. And we got to start with the beginning, right? And we're going to start with a guy named Arcadius. Arcadius was the son... Swift, the payment system, is that old? Okay, so we're just not even, we're just going to start throwing out questions. Hey, Viper, it's good to see you. I hope we learned about, no, I can't say that. We've talked about Rome before, and that particular passage of Roman history would have been covered several phases ago, Vipers. Also good to see you. Hey, Cave, what's up, what's up? Hey, Delarenz. The Swift payment system is about 20 years old. I got you. Cross Empire horseback money delivery service. It's the earlier versions of it go back into the late 80s and early 90s, but the modern sort of fully digital version is about 20 years old. So there we go with that. All right, Arcadius, he's the emperor. Here's the deal. Arcadius is going to take over as emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire when he's 17. And this is not going to put him in the world's most powerful position because he is, I mean, he's a 17-year-old kid. And he's within his maturity, right? He's old enough to be emperor by himself. But this kid doesn't have the material that he needs maturity-wise to run an empire in the situation that they're in. And unfortunately, most of the problems that we're going to run into under Arcadius are going to come from the fact that he is, well, if we're just going to put it lightly, a pushover. He is going to get bossed around a lot by his generals, and especially by his wife. His wife's a lady named Eudokia. And Arcadius, he's just not a very strong-willed individual. And that's kind of the problem with dynasties. You know, sometimes you get people like Theodosius the First that was like really strong and really powerful and really got the job done, and then they have a kid whose name is Arcadius, and they're kind of like, I mean, capable, but also somehow not. And as soon as Theodosius the First dies, there's going to be problems. And there are two big barbarian groups that are going to be big issues. Those are the Goths and the Huns. All right, so we have previously talked about both of these groups, but as a quick reminder or as a refresher for people that might not have been around before, the Goths were a group of Germanic people that had migrated into the Roman world in the late 200s and early 300s from sort of this region right here in the Black Sea. And a large portion of them had been settled roughly in this region right here inside the Roman Empire in the modern day the Roman province of Illyricum, which is today roughly Yugoslavia, old countries. So, you know, like Slovenia and Croatia and Montenegro, etc. So like in this region right here. And the Goths were supposed to be allies of the Romans. That was the deal that they had made under previous emperors. We will let you in the empire as long as you are friendly and you fight for us when other bad guys show up. Now, whether or not that's going to happen is the question. And if you have been with us in previous weeks, you'll know that there is another big group of people called the Huns. The Huns are originally going to get their start here in Central Asia, specifically right around this region right here, which is today where lots of countries that end with Stan are. So like Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, all of those countries. This was the ancient empire of the Kushans, and the Huns are going to sort of be a leftover group after that empire falls and gets swallowed up and shifted through a couple of different groups of people. But the Huns are going to be nomadic, and due to some expansion over here in northern China that we've already talked about in this phase, that you can go back and watch if you're more interested, a whole bunch of new countries pop up here in northern China and then solidify under one big country called the Northern Wei. It's spelled W-E-I. That pushes a lot of barbarians, especially the Rouran, who sit right up here, sort of north of the Tibetan Plateau, into this region. And that's going to push the Huns basically everywhere else. So the Huns, under the earliest version, are the Red Huns, who are called the Kittites, are going to invade India down here and fight a lot with the Gupta Empire. The Kittites are also going to invade Persia. They're going to get eventually beaten by Persia, and the other big group of the Huns called the Hephthalites, who are also referred to as the White Huns, who are going to form up in the very late 300s and early 400s and also move over this direction. So the Huns are going to be coming from Central Asia over into especially this region here and into this region here. Now, another one of these natural borders, or the limes of Rome, are these mountain ranges right here. These are the Caucasus Mountains. So here's the Black Sea, here's the Caspian Sea. These mountains are a sort of natural border. And in the ancient world, this was several different small kingdoms. We've already talked about Lazica, and if we go back to our images here, you can see on this side there's a little pocket kingdom right here that is a client of Rome called Lazica. They were very important in border defense because they literally held a couple of the passes through these particular mountains. And also there's a small country right here called Iberia, which is not related in any way to the Iberian Peninsula with Spain and Portugal. And there's another kingdom right here called Albania, which is frequently referred to as Caucasian Albania, to keep the difference from that country and, of course, the country that's over here today called Albania. But anyway, so this is a natural lime of Rome, or one of the limes of Rome here, and the Huns are going to start pushing here and over here. And all of this is stuff going to be happening roughly at the same time. So it's a pretty big deal. Let me catch up with chat. I thought it was the Western leaders who were pushed over these days. Yep. Someday you hope to line up Shane and the admins with a list of their crimes. Okay, who's responsible for Like a Goth Through the Flame? That's me. I came up with that one. Come at me, bro. I know the cure isn't everyone's bag, but you're still shocked they collapsed the Empire. Yeah, those Goths, those crazy people. For the record, Goth to a Flame was Shane. Yes, it was. Yes, the Ruron Khanate, indeed. Khan. Queen Tomris was from that region if she was real. Likely, yes. I would think that she was probably a person in some capacity, and perhaps a lot of the stories that seem to make her larger than life or perhaps more popular than she should have been were kind of accreted onto her as a form of mythological inflating, if you will. Hey Rainbow, we are talking history, and specifically we're talking about Eastern Rome under the Emperor Arcadius and his trying to deal with the problems with the Goths and the Huns. This is in the very early 400s, late 300s, early 400s. So he takes over in 383 as a co-emperor with his father. His father dies in 397, and then from 397 to 408, Arcadius is going to try to rule by himself. Try to. Note, try to. So here's the deal. The Goths are supposed to be friendly, right? Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. Please feel free to ask as many questions as you want to. Really, it says right here, please feel free to ask questions, but honestly, please do. We're here to have fun and goof off and chat and talk. And if I can tell you anything that makes sense or makes something more clear, hit me with it. And don't be afraid. We'll do tangents and chase rabbits and all that stuff too. So it's a good time around here. We're pretty laid back. So
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
Kyle, thank you so much for that resub. 23 months. That is crazy. Kyle, I see your first badge. I really do appreciate your support from the very get-go. Kyle was one of the first people that ever showed up in one of my chats and one of the first people that subbed to my stream. And Kyle's a good dude. And I need to catch up with you sometime and see how you're doing. I've been living in my own head for the last few weeks, and it's not really good for me there. So, do you have any illustrations of Goths so you can? No, I don't actually have a picture of what Gothic people would have looked like. Let me. I'm trying to think of even if I have like a statue of them or something. Maybe. Give me just a second. I might be able to go dig up a photo. Where would that be? Italy 2017. Yes. Okay. I don't know. I think these might be Gauls, but they might also be Sabines, and I can't remember if it's a Gaul or a Sabine. Sabines, yeah, those are Sabines. No, there's one. There's one. Let me find a picture of her. I'm looking through photos, by the way, of a particular location inside of. She's just dressed like a. I mean, I'll show you this photo. This is not going to necessarily be the best potential issue here because it's, number one, not in color, and number two, she's really just sort of looks like a Roman here. But this is a statue of a barbarian woman from the late 2nd century or early 3rd century AD. I gotta put this right here because I didn't realize that was showing. So She doesn't have a beard. You feel lied to. So, yeah. That is at a location in Italy. That's in the city of Florence. So, there we go. Why didn't the Goths and the Huns go after the Eastern Empire too? They did. So in previous streams, we've talked about the Goths invading the Eastern Roman Empire and being pushed out and then settled in the western part. The Huns are about to start attacking here in just a second. The Osprey books probably had them. Oh, Janko jeans. Didn't we have these Goths over here? Oh, sorry, wrong screen. Oh. Not enough armor, too much silk. That's totally wrong. Everybody knows that barbarian women wore chainmail bikinis. That is pornography. It's also art and, you know. Anyway, it is what it is. So, by the way, this strapping young lad is the Emperor Arcadius. This is a bust of Arcadius. So this is what he looked like. I can at least show you that. So here's the deal. When Theodosius dies and Arcadius takes over, the Goths who made deals with Theodosius sort of feel like, well, you know, we made deals with Theodosius and now he's dead. So do we really have to honor those to his kid? And the answer is not really. And over various periods of time, the Goths are actually going to rebel in the east, and they're going to leave where they had been settled here in Illyricum, and they're going to come down into the Balkan territory and bash a whole bunch of cities. At one point, they get all the way down here to sort of lower Greece and start burning down stuff. And what ends up happening is that Arcadius is going to have to basically buy them off. He's going to have to offer them titles, and specifically Roman military titles, that are going to sort of appease their leaders by making their leaders feel like they are legitimate parts of the Roman Empire. Because these barbarians were living in Rome, but they had not Romanized yet. The Goths had been inside of the boundaries of Rome now for about 60 or so years, and they had not really fully Romanized. They were still very much living in their own sort of traditional ways just inside the empire. And their leaders were starting to see the value of holding these big titles, right? So Arcadius is having to give out these titles, especially one called Magister Militum, which is basically, you know, military leader, you know, lord of the army, stuff like that. So it's only pornography if it's less than 200 years old, then it's art, right? Hey, Aristotle, good to see you, man. Don't set off the booby traps in the cave. We've got some other friends in the room. Let me do some additional shout outs. We've got Cave Geek in the room. Do go follow Cave Geek, who does art in ways that I bet you've never seen it done before. And it's really fascinating. And he's also a cool dude and knows a whole bunch of stuff and also plays games later on at night. So give him a follow. Also, we've got Aristotle in the room, who is a philosophy professor who says that basically all he does is crap post on stream, but he's actually a really brilliant dude and is quite capable of fielding random questions, and it's good stuff. Yeah, smart people all tend to say that they know nothing, so I'm past that. Did anyone see the interview where Lukashenko is convinced that Putin's going to make him a colonel of the Soviet army? The same sort of premise here. Same sort of premise. I am smaller and less powerful than you, so if you give me a title in your big world, it makes me more important, right? Cave Geek is Jon Snow, therefore knows nothing. So these Gothic rebellions, especially in the late 300s, are going to severely weaken the Roman world overall, because they're going to, number one, deny Rome the use of these barbarians as soldiers, and number two, they're going to literally kill Romans. When these Goths are going to start rebelling against each other, it might sometimes be fighting amongst different tribes of the Goths, or sometimes it might just be we've all lined up and we're going to go attack some cities and burn them down inside of Rome to extort some titles or bribes from one of the emperors or the other. So it's a pretty big deal, because by the time we get to the early 400s, so here we're talking around like 402 or so, the Huns are going to make their appearance in the Danube basin. And so again, the Danube River runs sort of right around here, and this is going to be the natural border between Roman territory and not Roman territory. Right, let's see if we can get the Danube. It's probably going to zoom in really close, and that's not what I'm going to want it to do. It won't just actually show it to you. Maybe, can I make it show waterways? I don't want that. I don't want the sightseeing tour. Go away. Go away. Yes, I don't want to see the sightseeing tour anymore. Oh man, where's the fiddlesticks? I did something and I don't know what I did. Layers? Ah, there we go. Can I put, is there not something for rivers? Is that under maybe, you would think it would be under places maybe, but that's borders. What is labels? Oh, that's just the titles of the country. More? Water body outlines. And you're still not going to show it to me. Oh, this is just showing a lake. Ah, but there's the Danube. Now, will it show it if I zoom out? No, of course it won't. Of course it won't. Anyway, the Danube starts all the way up here by Vienna, and it runs all the way down and all the way over through what is, you know, like Serbia today, and all the way down over here, and all the way over here, all the way over here, until it hits this nice big gulf, and it empties out into the Black Sea in what is modern-day Romania. So the Danube is very big, it's very important, and it's going to be one of these borders. And the Huns are going to sort of hover right around in here, kind of trying to see where the borders are, trying to see what they can get into, and figure out what's going on. There should be a post-apocalyptic Westeros world where Jon Snow is worshipped as the deity of ignorance. I'd get behind that. So the Huns are going to try their luck a few times. They're going to make a couple of attacks across the Danube, but because Arcadius had managed to buy off the Goths, they're going to be able to keep them from invading too far down into the empire. The Huns are also going to try to make a couple of attempts over this way across the border, but the Armenians and Lazicans and Iberians and even the Persians a little bit are going to help to kind of stop up that area. So the Huns are not really in full force yet. They're also not unified yet. At this point, there are still lots of different little groups of Huns sort of moving around in a sort of swarm of Huns, if you will. So they're not really where they're going to be eventually. So Arcadius is going to try to keep the empire together. He manages more or less to do so. But he's going to end up getting himself into some trouble politically and religiously speaking. So the empire at this point has Christianized, and it is expected for the emperors to be good Christians and to follow the instruction of Christian leadership. And at this particular point, the guy that was the bishop of Constantinople is a pretty important religious figure called John Chrysostom. And John Chrysostom particularly did not care for Arcadius's wife, this lady named Eudokia. And Eudokia was effectively the mouthpiece that told Arcadius what to do. And John Chrysostom sort of understood that this was a bad move because she was sort of petty and, according to the historical sources, was not a very good strategic thinker, and had gotten Arcadius into some trouble by trusting people that were sort of in her family instead of thinking for himself. So John Chrysostom is actually going to start preaching sermons against the empress, and this is going to get a lot of people really, really flustered, and it ends up getting John, the Bishop of Constantinople, exiled from the city, which is a pretty big mess. And it ends up turning into a whole big deal. There's this big whole church scandal, and Arcadius is right in the middle of it, and Eudokia is right in the middle of it. And in the process of doing all of this, the sort of wider Roman world is kind of figuring out what to do with these troublesome barbarians that are inside our border and these other big troublesome barbarians that are on the other side of our border, and they really don't know what to do. And then kind of oddly enough, at the point where he's in his early 30s, Arcadius is going to die. And he does not get assassinated, but the thing that we have to worry about here is he's young and he has died. And what that means is the guy that's going to take over next is like going to be for real a kid. And that guy's name is Theodosius II. Clearly named after his grandfather. When he takes the throne, he's only 7. And this is in the year 402. He's 7 years old. So you might go, okay, well, he's clearly not going to run the country then. That is the case. He does not run the country. Darn troublesome barbarians, they're pretty bad, right? The sea looks blue to me. Was everything black and white back then? No. Technically, the name for it for the Romans was the Pontus Euchinus. They called it a lake. They didn't even call it a sea like we do. And that's spelled Euxinus, Euchinus. I think that's correct. I know how to say it, but I can't spell in my head. I'd have to type it all out. Color was invented by the Romans much later, right before the fall of the empire. In fact, people seeing color for the first time was one of the contributing factors. Though to be fair, it really wasn't black and white. It was more like various sepia tones. Speaking of sepia tones, here is Theodosius II, who is sort of a brown guy, I guess. But this is clearly just poor marble. One of the things that we can note is the statues that we have of these emperors, they tend to get less fancy. And one of the things that we can learn about this over time is that it was costing a lot of money to get really, really good artists, or there weren't really good artists around. And either Rome didn't have the money, or all of the artists had gone to do other things, but try to survive or move to Persia or something. Anyway, this is Theodosius II. Could it just be that a new style was using rougher marble? No. There were... No, you can't bring this back to the Goths with shredded jeans. That's a fair point to make, though, that maybe this was just an artistic style change. But seriously, there were particular quarries of marble that were well renowned, and everybody knew that marble from certain locations was just the good stuff to use. And if you could not afford it, you just can't afford it. So Theodosius II takes over at 7. By the way, him with the beard and mustache was not him at 7. That's from a much later point in his life. So who's going to run the things? Well, again, it's these magister militums. It's these military leaders. And under Theodosius II, one of those is a Goth. Because his father had to give one of these Gothic leaders this title magister militum. So one of the biggest military figures in the Roman Empire at the time was a Gothic dude who was going to start getting really involved in politics. And by the time that Theodosius II starts getting a little bit older, his sister is going to be particularly influential in his life. And when he does get married, his wife becomes very influential in his life. And he's going to rule for about 48 years. And he's never really going to be in control for quite some time. One of the biggest things, though, that happens when he is in charge, and this is going to it's going to be finished in 413, but there are, in Constantinople, a series of really big walls built. And you can see here, if I zoom out a little bit, this line right here. Let me kill this. So if you see this line right here.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Dilo. Thank you, my friend. And Vipers, welcome to the adventure. Myrenius Mansanus. Not to be a bearded kid. Here you thought you were a kindred spirit. Sparty is hiding in the line. So anyway, these big walls that get built, these are built in 413, and they are referred to as the Theodosian walls. And if you go to Istanbul today, you can still see these walls because they're still around. Let me see if I can get a, aha, bum ba bum. And you can actually drive down this road which runs right by these big walls. And these are actually the remains of the walls. Now, clearly some of these have been shored up a little bit and made to be a little bit more stable. But what you're looking at right here is stuff that was built 1,600 years ago as a defensive line for the capital city. And the undertaking of building all of these walls is particularly massive here because these are what we have pretty important design structures. So there's an internal wall, there is a bailey or a meeting ground where you can move troops and stuff around on the inside, and then there's an external wall. So the guard houses are typically built along the internal wall, and this was designed on purpose so that you could see above the external wall from inside. These are really big fortified walls, and they are going to stand all the way till today. Yeah, gotta be aliens. Gotta be aliens, right? When did they start to count the years from zero? Like, since Christianity was not mainstream right away, when was the switch? It depends on when exactly you want to address that. When did they start counting at one? Very basically, a monk in Europe back in the 1500s decided to try to count all of the years ever and was off by a few, and then that got reorganized and recounted a little bit and readjusted a little bit by the Pope Gregory. This is why we refer to it as the Gregorian calendar, and that's kind of the actualized reinforcement of that. But not everybody still uses this calendar. Of course, we still have a lot of other calendars that exist out there, like the Muslim calendar, the Chinese calendar, etc., etc. That's later than you thought. Yes. So prior to that, the years were usually counted in regnal years. So this is where you say year so-and-so of King so-and-so. And you have to have people that memorize things and remember things. And, you know, they didn't really care about global historical concepts because they really didn't have time to worry about it. So 1,600 years, sweet summer children. Laughs in pyramids, right? Do you have an opinion on the Holocene calendar? The one that they're trying to talk about and use before present, where they try to make everything either present time or before present. The biggest issue there is the present is always moving, and that means you have to change the reference date every single time. Every single time, right? So, yeah, it's a mess. I don't know if that's going to catch on. Maybe. We've got second presence, right? If we run into intelligent alien species and they get really ticked off about our history and they enforce some new calendar on top of us, sure. Pyramids, 4,500 years. Sweet babes, last in Göbekli Tepe. I've been to Göbekli Tepe and it's amazing. It is amazing. Okay, so Theodosius. He's on the throne, but he's not really doing anything. His generals are the one building these walls. These walls are, again, built in 413. They're called the Theodosian walls. You can still go see them today. During the early part of Theodosius's reign, what's really going to happen is that these Magister Militums are going to be constantly on the borders trying to just keep everything in check. There's a whole bunch of mess going on with barbarian kingdoms around the Danube frontier. There's a lot of really bad internal stuff going on in the Western Empire that requires a lot of attention from the east, especially in 406. In 406, the Rhine River freezes over, and somewhere around 40,000 barbarians manage to get into the west. So a lot of the eastern attention is trying to prop the west up. But one of the things that is going to be very important for later generations is that Theodosius, when he becomes a little bit more involved, is that he's going to recognize the need for a unified Roman law code. Before that, Rome had sort of a hodgepodge mixture of precedent, and none of it was really written down very well. It was a collection of edicts that were sort of stored haphazardly in a big file folder somewhere. And Theodosius is going to get some of his lawyers to start trying to go through all of this stuff and collect all of the Roman laws that had been published since the Emperor Constantine. So that's in the early 300s. So this would be 100-something years worth of laws. And it took his lawyers 9 years to track down all of these. But this is going to be the Codex of Theodosius, which is a really important first step towards the big law codes that are going to come out of Rome under the Emperor Justinian in the 500s, especially the biggest and most important, good gracious, it's CJC, the body of civic law. It's Corpus Juris Civilis, and I, for some reason, couldn't say Corpus Juris Civilis. I've read the whole thing in Latin. It's a pain in the butt. Wonder if the 2020s have nullified the phrase, those who look back at the good old days don't know history. Perhaps. So this codifying of the law thing is a pretty big deal. But the Huns are going to be a big problem under Theodosius. In 420, there's going to be a big change in Persia. And if you were with us when we did Persia, you'll know about this. But if you weren't with us, the Emperor of Persia decided to start persecuting Christians very, very heavily. And as the Roman Empire was Christian, they did not feel like they could basically deal with this. So Theodosius is going to try to invade Persia to stop this persecution of Christianity. And what's going to end up happening is that as soon as they move their army over here into the Persian frontier, all of those Huns that were sitting right over here in the Danube are going to realize that the Balkan Peninsula is basically open for the taking, and the Huns are going to invade into this region right here, which is referred to as Thrace, which is basically, one step away from Constantinople. So Theodosius actually has to call off this war with Persia and run back home to try to turn away the Huns. And they had become pretty deeply entrenched in the Roman world, and they had scattered out. The Hunnic armies were very mobile. Lots of them were on horseback, and things are going pretty badly. And what's going to end up having to happen is that this takes 4 years to kind of nail this invasion down, and the leader of the Huns is finally going to sit down with Theodosius and talk, and they basically bribe him. They say, we will give you 350 pounds of gold if you leave. And he says, okay, fine, but what about next year? And they basically set up this thing called an indemnity, where they have to pay a yearly bribe to try to keep the Huns out. It's 350 pounds of gold per year to keep the Huns out of the empire. And thus the IRS was born, right? Well, it turns out that when you start pumping a whole lot of money into the Hunnic economy, it becomes a lot more interesting for people inside of the Hunnic world to want to take over. And it's during this time in the early 420s, early to mid 420s, that you're going to start seeing individual Hunnic leaders that are going to get really, really powerful and really, really starting to centralize things. And two of those people are brothers, one named Attila and one named Bleda. So if you've ever heard of Attila the Hun, this is sort of where he starts showing up. And there's a big deal here because they're going to want to keep this money. And they're going to want to control all this money to themselves. So they put a big sort of pan-Hunnic army together, and they start threatening the east. And especially Attila is going to be a terror and starts pushing across the Danube when he can and starting to cause more trouble, and effectively manages to extort more money out of Theodosius. They get the indemnity increased from 350 pounds per year to 700 pounds per year, because they're two brothers, Attila and Bleda, and they both need to be, bartered off. Because if you insult my brother, that's going to make me angry, and then I'm going to invade, and surely if I invade, my brother's going to help me, so you've got to pay both of us now, right? IRS, what about next year? You're going to say the mafia, but you guess they're interchangeable. Oh. Just as a note, I get really ticked off that the IRS knows exactly how much I'm supposed to pay them, and instead of just telling me how much I should pay them, they make me guess, and then if I screw it up, they take my stuff away. I really don't like that. Anyway, so the Huns are becoming a big problem. They do end up fighting a really big battle over here in the west in the 450s, a place called the Battle of Catalonian Plains. We'll talk about that on Thursday. And after that battle, very soon after, Attila dies, and the Huns sort of fall a little bit more apart. They're still going to be a threat, but they're not as big of a threat. The new big threat is actually over here in the west, especially over here in northern Africa. Northern Africa was much greener back then, all the way down to this big mountain range that you can see moving right here. All of this was green. This is partially because of climate change and partially because the Sahara Desert is actually moving, which is sort of weird considering how big it is. But Northern Africa was one of the most important food production areas in the Roman world. It was way behind Roman territory lines. It had not been invaded by an outside force with serious amounts of territory for hundreds of years. Rome is going to take this land during the Second Punic War and some during the Third Punic War. And those are in the 200s BC, right? So this is in the 400s. This is like 600 years that this area had been Roman, and no outside armies had really ever gotten over here. So they didn't really have very big defenses. And it turns out barbarians want everything. And by this point, Western Rome had effectively been overrun by barbarians. They had given up on Britain. They had lost big parts of France. They had lost big parts of Spain. And they had lost Northern Africa. And when they lost Northern Africa, this is going to put a big crunch on food. Especially the big cities here in the West needed food. And Egypt, which was the second biggest, and well, it was the biggest, but it was one of the two big bread baskets of the empire, could not produce enough food to feed all of the East and the West. So the West is like, we've got to go get Northern Africa back if we want to sustain our food and our military. So the East has to send armies over here to the West to try to help them. And this is what I kind of call the chaos of 443. They try to go over there. They send a big army over. The army gets all the way to Sicily, which is this island right here. And they're going to sort of team up with the Western Roman army and invade Northern Africa. But as soon as they move their army over here, well, guess what? Persia and, the Huns are going to attack at the same time. And the Huns especially are going to do really big damage down here in the Balkan Peninsula. They're going to burn a whole bunch of the cities. They're going to sack several of the cities. And they get within sight of the walls of Constantinople before Theodosius can get back and start trying to treat them off. Again, like, how do I get you away? Because I've got to go turn around and deal with Persia now. Why am I filling out the forms when the IRS all I know is the answer Schmarnite? I don't know. It drives me up the wall. They started considering pre-filled tax reforms here. That would be great. Life was rough pre-DoorDash. Right, you can't just call food. You can't just call Northern Africa and say, hi, I need grain for a city of 4 million. Can you just bring that over tonight? That's crazy how slow warfare used to be, right? I mean, when you're moving everybody on foot or on horseback, it's crazy I don't know. It's just weird that they even kept it together as long as they did to me. Yeah, and communication in general, like you have to wait for like, oh my gosh. It's just really amazing that any empire lasts for any period of time given how slow things are. But we're going to get back over here. We're going to pay off the Huns one more time because now we've got to turn around and try to push Persia out. How do we pay off the Huns? Well, we go to the Huns and we say, look, we want you to go away. And they go, pay us. And he's like, look, we've already paid you. And he's like, no, pay us more. And he's like, how much do you want? And they go, 2,100 pounds of gold. We want you to triple it. They want you to triple it. Triple my payment. Give it here. And Rome has to. They really, I mean, they could have said no, but they would not have had an army to fight. The army that they had in the east had to be held over here to keep Persia from invading any further. The Goths were wrapped up in the attempt to retake northern Africa, and the other couple of armies that Rome had here in northern France were trying to hold on to whatever territory they could. It was pay or we're going to just keep destroying everything. So the East had to fork over 2,100 pounds of gold. That's a crazy amount. It's just crazy amount. And at this point, they're going to try to do whatever they can to get rid of the Huns. They try to send some assassins to assassinate the leadership of the Huns, but they get bribed away from doing the assassination. And Theodosius himself is not going to be particularly capable of doing very much at all. And he dies in one of the most ignoble ways possible. He's riding, he's not in the war, he's just riding one day, and he falls off of his horse and it kills him. And so that's the end of Theodosius. He did. Now, I've fallen and I can't get up. Yeah, pretty much. More ignoble than Elvis. No, nobody, I don't know. There are ways to be more ignoble than eating a sandwich on the toilet, but not too many. So, Marcian. All right. Here is Marcian. Dun, 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 dun. At least he still can make gold coins, right? At least he can still make gold coins. But here he is. This is a coin of Marcian. He was one of the generals that was pretty big at the time, and he is going to end up being put on the throne mostly by the recognition that they needed somebody that had competency to try to pull the empire out of this hole that they were in. And Marcian is only going to rule for 7 years, but he does manage to turn things around quite a bit. The first thing that he's going to say is, okay, look, we're not paying the Huns anymore. And a lot of people get really ticked off about that. Like, what do you mean we're not going to pay the Huns anymore? We've got to pay the Huns. If they're going, I mean, they're going to come back and wreck everything. And he goes, look, if we keep paying them, we can't fund anything. Like, we can't keep the army together. We can't keep trade going. So we can pay the Huns and protect a shell of an empire, or we can use that money to train troops, try to keep trade going, and then if the Huns invade, we can fight them. And this is a real calculated move here, and Marcian is actually going to get real lucky, because in 452 or so, around there, Attila is going to die, and the Huns are going to just fizzle out and not be a big deal. That's going to be a real big boon, because he's going to tell the Huns, we're not paying you. And they're like, well, we're going to come get you. And then Attila dies. And they're like, oh, crap, we've got to do civil war now. Every Hun for himself, or something like that, you know. So it's a big mess. His other big deal is that he's going to start trying to use some of his money to rebuild the treasury. He does raise taxes, he shores up some monetary policy, and he's going to directly invade Lazica. One of the things that was going on at this time was there's a king of Lazica named Gubazes, and you don't need to know too much about this stuff. I love Lazica. It's one of my most interesting little corners of the world at this time. There's, again, Lazica is just basically this little triangle right here, the modern day country of Georgia, not Jordan, Georgia. And this little area right here, this little pocket, becomes such an important kingdom that Rome and Persia both fight a 20-year war over who's going to get to run it. It's crazy stuff. But anyway, he invades Lazica, brings them back under control, stops paying some indemnity to the Persians, and is going to use this money to shore up the Roman economy. And he does so quite well. Marcian's biggest, I guess, feather in his cap is that he was able to take advantage of a brief period of time from 450 to 457 when he ruled, where the barbarian kingdoms around Rome were less organized. All right, he's going to be able to form stuff up and shape everybody back up and drill some troops and get another army or two ready. He's going to be remembered fairly well in history. His another big thing that happens under his rule is this big thing called the Council of Chalcedon. Chalcedon is going to be a really important theological meeting where all of these church leaders are going to get together. This is an attempt to get rid of some heresy issues that had cropped up, and it's going to solve some heresy issues, but it does end up creating other heresy issues that starts playing into international politics, and it's going to cause a whole bunch of kind of domino effects on the Christian side of things. And Marcian is not going to be remembered very well for trying to get involved in that. But overall, he is what he is, and it's a pretty interesting period of time when he's around. Rome wasn't biked in a day. It wasn't indeed. Jordan's always on my mind. Jordan, Chalcedon, take me away. So that is Marcian, and there's a lot more stuff that I could talk about specifically on all of these people, by the way. We do have incredibly good records from this period of time. We've got 4 Roman historians that cover this period of time very, very thoroughly from both perspectives of the East and the West. So we have a lot of really good sources and a lot of really good history stuff when it comes to archaeological digs. So Marcian is going to die of old age, and he's just going to die of natural causes. And when he does, the generals at the time are going to decide that they want to run Rome. They had seen the success of somebody that was kind of military-minded instead of politically minded, and they're going to run Rome. And they picked this guy named Leo the First, and they put him on the throne. And the idea here is very, very openly told to Leo, you're just going to do whatever the military tells you. You are a puppet. You are going to do what we tell you to do, when we tell you to do it, and how we tell you to do it. This is the only way that Rome's going to survive. Well, Leo has his own ideas about that. And he's not really going to let them push him around. So for those of you that keep making references to the eyes, those would have had stones, probably either actual precious stones like sapphires or emeralds for blue or green, or colored glass in them. They would not have just been an empty pupil and iris. They would have had stones in there to make those eyes look more like actual eyes. You didn't know they could Photoshop Steve Buscemi's eyes on people back then. Oh, you all. Now I want to go dig up pictures and show you pictures where there are ancient statues that have the eyes in them. This is going to take just a second. Let me see if I can... I know I had at least one. No, not you. Here we go. So check this guy out. So this is what they would have looked like. So this is colored glass with a pupil, so it doesn't look quite so weird. And now you're going to go, but look, this guy's pupil is bigger on this side than it is on that side. So yeah, it's ancient, and this might be a replacement from somebody that, you know, whose kid knocked it out. You never know. Anyway, there you go. Shane presents famous stoners of history. Oh, man. Interesting. I don't know if I could do that or not. Anyway, Leo, he gets put on the throne, and they tell him, you're pretty much going to be, you're going to be a puppet. And he's like, I don't really like this idea. And I'm not really going to do what you tell me to do. So he takes over in 457. He's going to rule from 457 to 474. Here's the thing. There's going to be a pretty important moment in his early rule. There's going to be a Gothic prince-ish kind of character, the son of the leading Goth at the time. The son's name is Theodoric. And Theodoric was basically a political prisoner, but he gets to go live in Constantinople. And Leo is going to sort of foster parent this kid. And this is really important because Theodoric is going to go on to be one of the most important people that has anything to do with the fall of the West, because Theodoric is going to be directly involved in it. And Theodoric is going to be a person that we talk about for the rest of the stream, and he will come up again multiple times next stream, and he'll come up even again when we get back around to another stream of Barbarian Kingdoms after this stuff. History of Cannabis would actually make for a good viewer request. I could probably do that. So, Theodoric, by the way, is an Ostrogoth. He is raised in the court. Leo actually quite likes this young kid. Theodoric respects Leo quite a bit. Theodoric is going to learn Roman culture. He's going to learn Roman leadership. He's going to learn how to read Latin and speak Latin and Greek. He's going to become very much Roman. And Theodoric becoming Roman is an important movement in history because he is the next in line to lead an entire chunk of the Goths. And when he becomes Romanized, this is going to be a big, big deal, right? So, there are problems with the barbarians. Again, these Huns, they're not completely gone. They're going to invade. And Leo has a really interesting strategy here. So the Huns are mostly horseback people. They, at this point, did have some infantry, but they're mostly horseback. And Leo gets this crazy idea. Here's the crazy idea. Our cities, especially Constantinople, have really big walls around them. The Huns do not have siege weapon technology. So when the Huns invade, here's what we're going to do. We're going to move everybody from the surrounding areas into our cities. We're going to shut the gates, and we're going to, have all of our food and all of our supplies and everything inside the city. And then we're going to let the Huns just run around and do whatever they want to, because when we move all the food inside the city and all of the valuables inside the city, the Huns aren't going to be able to find anything. And they're going to invade, and they can't take the city, and there aren't going to be any people to kill, and there's not going to be any food to find, and there's not any shiny stuff to steal, and then the Huns are just going to run away, because what's the point of running around an empty country that you can't really get anything out of? And that is exactly what happens. The Huns, they're like, we're going to come get Rome, and he's like, go to the cities, and everybody just kind of sits back. And the Huns ride around for a couple of months, like, where's everybody? And there's nobody to murder. I mean, they kill people, but it's not like they're going to fight this big, city full of people and slaughter all of them and sack the city, because they can't get in the cities anymore. This is a pretty smart move here from old Leo. And this is going to be a big saver, because when the Huns come in, if you don't have to fight them, that also means you don't have to pay them. They'll just go away on their own. So Leo's saving the country money, he's saving the people's lives, and he's preventing them from taking the cities, and he's keeping his food supply up. So pretty brilliant stuff. The Huns are really pissed off about all of this stuff. They end up leaving, and the Huns are becoming less of a threat anyway by this point. So this is, again, 457 to 474 when he's ruling. But those pesky, pesky Goths, remember, they are already inside the empire. They had been settled in Illyricum, which is the coast of the Balkans. That's over here, right around in this area. The Goths are having big internal problems. There are multiple different parts of the Goths. They're like Thuringi Goths, and we don't need to get into all the specifics here, but the idea is that there are different factions within the Gothic tribes, and everybody kind of wants to be in charge. And they're going to start fighting each other. And the Goths, when they start fighting each other, are going to cause bigger issues overall, because the Goths were supposed to be helping the empire fight off the other barbarians. So when the Gothic leaders say, we're not going to go help you fight the Huns, or we're not going to go help you fight the Vandals, or we're not going to go help you fight the other band of Goths that have come in by this point, or any of the other barbarians, we're not going to go help you fight the Gepids or the Sueves or anybody. This leaves, especially the Western Roman army, to kind of fend for itself. And the Western Roman army was really an army. They had one left at this point, and it wasn't very strong. And the internal fighting amongst the Goths is going to be a big problem, because they were supposed to be helping, and they weren't. And the East tries, through this connection with Theodoric and Leo, to encourage the Goths to stop fighting and go help the West, because the East can't send its armies, because the East is also trying to worry about the Huns, and they're also trying to worry about Persia, because Persia is becoming more solidified and was once again a threat. So you can't just leave this border completely undefended, even if it means that stuff over in the West has to kind of deal itself out. And it is dealing itself out, and it's not going very well for the people in the West at this point. By the time we get to the very end of Leo's tenure as emperor, the situation with the Vandals, who we'll talk more about next stream, the situation with the Vandals down here in North Africa had become fairly desperate. They were extorting large amounts of money from the Romans in the West. They had already sacked the capital city of Rome in 455. They were becoming a really big threat to piracy and shipping. And Leo decides, I've got to go deal with the Vandals. And again, this is another one of these moments where some people think it's just East and it's just West, and they don't touch and they don't think. He was aware of all of this stuff. And Leo had the bigger navy of the two, and he's like, I'm going to go send my troops down here to Northern Africa, and we're going to push the Vandals out and get that food supply back to the Western Empire. And the thing is, it goes so badly. It completely goes badly. The Vandals had a fleet of their own at that point. The Vandals are going to destroy some of the Roman fleet. They're going to push the Roman infantry out of Northern Africa, and then the Vandals are actually going to counterattack. And they get all the way over Sicily here, and they even invade Greece. And this is like a really bad backfire. The Vandals were perfectly fine just ruling Northern Africa and parts of Spain and extorting money from Rome and taking over the islands here in the Mediterranean. But they would take more if they could. And the Vandals being good at boats is something that is kind of scary, because, it's like barbarians are supposed to be on foot or at worst on horseback, but now barbarians with boats, this is like crazy stuff. It should also be noted that the Vandals are likely from Scandinavia in origin, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on in a later stream. Is there a reason that the Vandals became synonymous with property destruction over everyone else? No, that is absolutely directly related. When Rome became the target of Vandal attack in 454, the Romans tried to hold them off, but it didn't work. And when they sacked Rome in 455, they sacked the city for 2 weeks. And they burned and they raped and they pillaged and they stole everything that they could put their hands on. And being vandalized comes from that particular event. It was such a big deal that people thought that the Vandals were part of the army of the apocalypse. And a lot of people that were Christians in the Roman Empire thought that this was the end of days. That's how bad the Vandals sacked Rome. It was pretty rough. One of the big things that happened as a response was St. Augustine, who was from Hippo. Hippo was a city here in northern Africa. So St. Augustine of Hippo wrote this big book called The City of God, which is this great religious text which basically says, look, they might have destroyed a city, but Christianity is bigger than that, and we live in the city of God, and it's got a lot of like uplifting things like this isn't the end of the world, it's just the destruction of a city. Yes, that city is very big and very important, but it's not like, we shouldn't consider ourselves citizens of the earth, but citizens of heaven. Really, really interesting book if you are into Christian theology or studying Christian ideology during the period of time of the barbarians. Give City of God a look. It's very big and it's very dense, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it. Sacked is also the original term for teabagging, so the Vandals teabagged everyone. Not completely. After beating them in Halo, obviously. Okay, there we go. They captured the flag and then gave them the old, up, down, crouch, uncrouch, crouch, uncrouch. Right. So Leo is going to be married to this lady named Eudocia, and he's going to have a son. But Leo dies rather suddenly from, and this is potentially worse than falling off of your horse. He dies from dysentery, which is a sickness which basically makes you poop until you can't poop anymore. And he died from dehydration caused by dysentery while trying to be out on campaign, trying to predict his... You thought that only happened in Oregon. No, that happened in the ancient world all the time. Oregon Trail death, right? So, who becomes emperor? Well, very briefly, Leo II does. Oregon Trail is older than you thought, right? Leo II is his child. His child was literally a very young toddler-esque kid. I think it's like 3 or 4. And Leo II is only going to rule for about 2 or 3. Anyway, he doesn't make it past his 7th birthday. There are a couple of coins that are issued in his name, but they don't have him on it. Here he is, right here, this little kid sitting on the throne next to this guy. This guy's name is Zeno. And you go, well, who is that? Well, here's the thing. Zeno was an opportunistic politician / military leader, and he saw an opening. When Leo I died, Zeno decides he's going to marry Leo's wife and then adopt Leo II as a child. So that would make him emperor. And then suddenly, at age 7, Leo II dies. Now, you might be thinking what I'm laying down, and if you're thinking that it's almost pretty clear here that Zeno wormed his way into the throne and then killed the actual emperor, that's what a lot of people think. Now, we can't be certain, because here's the thing. The ancient world is rough, right? Kids died all the time from stuff that was completely preventable in modern world, but not preventable in the ancient world. So it's hard to say whether or not Leo II, child emperor, was murdered or if he maybe actually just did die. There are people that are on both sides of the fence about this. But one way or the other, Leo II is dead and Zeno is going to become the emperor. And he starts issuing coins in his own name. And here he is. Look at me, I am Zeno. Infant mortality, poop death, no DoorDash. Yeah, that's a pretty... don't forget falling off your horse. Right? Falling off your horse, because that's what happens to Theodosius II. So, you can't even trust that. Bad times all around. You'd invest in Zeno coin? Oh man, let's not even go there. So Zeno coin. The next, I mean, I guess you could make this image an NFT and then use that as the, your. I don't even want to go there. Never mind. Let's just leave that alone. So, by the time we get to Zeno rules from 474 to 491. And by the time that this starts happening, things are really, really bad. Rome has developed a sickness, and it looks like it's going to be terminal for at least part of the empire. They're going to have to amputate one of its limbs because things in the West are going really, really badly. We'll talk about this more next week, but Zeno is faced with a whole bunch of choices, and he doesn't always make the right ones. One of the big choices is how to deal with what's happening in the West. There is a guy over in the West who is one of these barbarian Magister Militums. His name is Ricimer. Ricimer had been basically in charge of picking Roman emperors for the last 3 Roman emperors. And he had not picked good emperors. He had picked people that were purposefully weak. And you go, wait. What happened to Romans being emperors of Rome? Well, they were, but because of their reliance on barbarian federati and barbarian troops fighting for them, the West was sort of beholden to these big Magister Militum barbarians. And when Ricimer says this person is going to be emperor, it doesn't really matter what the Romans want. It's, do you want to exist as a state? And if not, Ricimer is going to kill everybody that disagrees with him because he's in charge of the military. And there really isn't any other force that's kind of holding the western part of Roman Empire together except for Christianity, and Christians don't have an army at this point, right? I mean, they have like the army of God, but that's a figurative metaphor, right? This is what happens when you send jobs overseas. I guess this is what happens when you have bad monetary policy, choose political leaders on popularity contests instead of skill. Those people then go on to set up dynasties that are completely ill-funded and ill-founded, and then you end up bringing in their cronies to do your work. That's kind of what happens. You farm out your jobs. Well, they didn't have really very much to do. They were torn. Anyway, Ricimer is picking emperors and not picking good ones. And Zeno is going to have to decide whether or not he's going to support these emperors in the West or not. And this is a calculated decision here, right? Because the East is not doing the best, but is doing better than the West is. The West by this point had fractured substantially. And Ricimer is saying this person is now the emperor. And if Zeno goes, yes, that person is the emperor, what this actually does is it gives more power to Ricimer, because that means he successfully did then pick the emperor. And you don't necessarily want to give this person more power because he's very openly not a Roman. He's proclaiming his barbarian heritage. So Zeno is going to be stuck with making bad picks. He doesn't like all these people. He does end up backing everybody that they pick, including a guy named Julius Nepos, and we'll talk about him more next week. But this is going to be pretty substantial because, well, 2 years after Zeno takes over, Ricimer gets killed, and another barbarian named Odoacer is going to depose the last Roman emperor in the West, a young kid named Romulus Augustulus, and declare himself king of Italy. And then Zeno's like, oh crap, like what do? Do I recognize this barbarian as ruler of Italy? Or do I say, no, you're completely illegitimate, go get back the Romans that we were putting in the power positions? And, Zeno decides to try to recognize Odoacer, and he's just like, look, if this is going to make you our friend and let you fight with us if we need you, I'll recognize you. And Odoacer's like, you don't have any power here. You know, it's like the meme from Theoden, like, you have no power here. Because he really didn't. Because if Zeno had power in the West, he wouldn't have let Ricimer push him around. But it's done. Like, it's you know, the die has been cast here. You're stuck with what you got. And then he's going to have to deal with the rebellions from the Goths. I declare I am king of Italy. Exactly. So Odoacer, by the way, is the guy that's declaring himself king of Italy. Zeno is the emperor of the East. I don't know if I got all of that right, and there are too many names flying around right here. This is another problem with this period of time. The names change really, really rapidly, and it can be pretty confusing. So here's the deal. Rome is supposed to be friends with the Goths. Well, they're supposed to be friends with the Ostrogoths. But one of the Ostrogothic leaders is going to rebel against Zeno with one of the Roman Magister Militums on his side. So then Zeno is going to have to defeat them. Then Zeno has to fight against his brother-in-law, who starts a rebellion in league with the Ostrogoths. And so then he has to fight his brother-in-law. Then another one of the Roman generals rebels against Zeno. And Zeno actually does manage to fight this guy off with the help of the Goths, but specifically with the help of Theodoric. And then he has to fight against a rebellion in the southern border down here in what we call the Levant region, when a whole bunch of people called Samaritans rebel. And this is just all too much, right? It's almost like the world is collapsing. It kind of is. You don't claim to be a psychic, but you're thinking the Western emperors are going to fall first. Yeah, the Western Empire is gone. In 476, when the last Roman emperor, Romanus Augustulus, gets pushed off the throne by Odoacer, that is the end of the Western Roman Empire. And all of this territory over here is barbarian territory now. And what is Roman is still basically just here in the east. So, what is Zeno going to do? He fights off all of these rebellions, and he's really honestly just trying to hold on. Everyone invades Constantinople. Germany invades France, despite neither existing yet. He's trying to hold on. He had made a friendship with Theodoric, and he tries to use this friendship to play the Goths off of each other. He tries to favor Theodoric in situations and disputes between the Goths, so that the different versions of the Goths will end up fighting against each other instead of fighting against him. He does get some ground made up when it comes to economic stuff. He does try to get some stuff settled with the church, but he doesn't completely. He makes a whole bunch of other issues. Oh, by the way, here's Theodoric. This is Theodoric the Amal. He is a Goth, and he is dressed like a Goth. Why don't I mean, earlier when Vipers is like, hey, what does a Goth look like? I don't know why I just didn't show you that. Good gravy. Such a Momo. Here's a Goth for you. Now, he is dressed in a Roman military outfit, so that's notable. But just the mustache and the little soul patch thing is much more common for the Goths instead of the big full beard. And this sort of like curly, long hair thing is a big deal for them too. This is from a little bit later on, but there is Theodoric. You think you'll stick with your previous mental image. What's he holding in his hand? He is holding a globe with a little genius on top of it. So this is... So a genius is technically a personification of an idea or a thing. And I would bet that this is either the genius of Rome itself, or perhaps the genius of his capital city, which was a place called Ravenna, which we'll talk about a lot more next week. But geniuses are these little spirits of a place. Sometimes you also hear them called genius loci. Here spelled L-O-C-I, not L-O-K-I, meaning locations, where we get the word location from. So, Zeno, he does this thing. He tries to hold on. He tries to keep the empire together. He doesn't manage to keep the West propped up. He manages to keep the East on its footing. He gets a little bit of ground covered up with reform. He gets a little bit of ground made up with monetary policy, killing the Loki punts before they had a chance to fight. I know I have to sort of, I got to stay ahead of them sometimes. But he is going to die without an heir. He does die of natural causes, and they're not like horrible natural causes or some weird thing. He just dies. But here is where interesting politics is going to happen. His wife was named Ariadne. And if you've ever seen Inception, Ariadne is the architect of the mazes there in the movie. So probably where they got the name from. Anyway, this is Ariadne. And you go, well, whoa, she's an empress that has statues. Yeah, she's a pretty important figure here. Because when Zeno dies, Ariadne is going to be looked at almost sort of as an empress. Because Zeno had managed to be more or less successful during his rule, he did not have a whole ton of people left that hated his guts. He had basically killed all of his detractors. They had started rebellions and he had killed them. But Ariadne was going to have a lot of support as his wife, and she was fairly popular in public, and the Roman Senate in the East sort of looked to her and said, I mean, we kind of trust your choice. Who do you want to pick? And there was even a potential hint here of, do you just kind of want to rule things yourself? Now, that probably would not have lasted for very long if she were to try to rule by herself. But this is a bit of a shifting tone, especially here in the Eastern Empire, of women being in positions of more political power. And this is going to come into full fruition a little bit later on under emperors like Justinian, whose wife is a political powerhouse and is in some ways more responsible for Justinian's successes in certain areas than his own. But Ariadne is going to be pretty smart and pretty savvy, and she chooses a guy named Anastasius, who was and still couldn't drive. Well, I mean, nobody could drive because there weren't cars back then. But she picks this guy. This guy is Anastasius. This, by the way, is a very, very beautiful marble relief. That guy looks like a horse. This is the horse. This is Anastasius. So I know that there might be some confusion there. But yeah, this is Anastasius here. Why the long face? Anyway, so that horse is your spirit animal, like the no craps given horse. Like, oh my gosh, do I have to stand here in this pose without trampling this woman? This is a beautiful piece of art, by the way. I was very glad to be able to share this. Very beautiful bas relief here. Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, so she picks Anastasius. Anastasius was already a sort of elder statesman. He was 61 at the time. And he is going to marry Ariadne and become emperor. Now, there was a bit of a hubbub because there were several people that were kind of jockeying to be the new emperor. And when Ariadne picked Anastasius, this is going to kind of kill some of that momentum that they had. And there's going to be some political enemies right off the bat. Those Romans have shifted back away from the torn jeans and rough marble. Well, Anastasius is going to basically be one of the more important figures. He in his rule, he rules, by the way, from 491 to 518. And we won't cover all of the stuff that he does. We're going to end basically at 500 where we're supposed to. But he's going to be responsible for turning a lot of stuff around for the East. So when he became emperor, there were some people that were not very popular, or they didn't think very highly of him. And he's going to manage to buy them off with tax breaks. And you go, well, that doesn't sound like it's going to refill the treasury. The crazy thing about it is he sort of had this idea that if you lowered people's taxes, they were more likely to pay them. You know, if somebody says, you got to give me $1 million, you're going to be like, I'm not giving you anything. But if you're like, hey, give me $1. Are you not entertained? Is that not why you are here? Nixolotl. Nix was here and then did a raid and is here with the cute little axolotls, the little marching axolotls. Welcome back, Nix. I hope that your stream was delightful. What are we up to? If you have works in progress that you'd like to share, please do. If you have social media thingies, like you've got like an Instagram or ArtStation or whatever you'd use to promulgate your art to the world, please feel free to share that. And I should have said that to Steve as well, and I feel bad that I didn't, and I feel like I need to go try to find Steve's ArtStation and share it with you all. Is that his stuff? Is that his stuff? Yeah. All right, so look at Nix's stuff. Are you not entertained? This is Steve Sketch's ArtStation. If you've never looked at Steve's art, please go do. Thanks again, Steve. I don't know if you're still around, but thanks for the raid. Nix, thanks for bringing all your people in. For those of you that might have come in with Nix and don't know who I am, my name is Shane. I teach history at college, and on stream here we talk about history stuff, but we do it in a pretty laid-back environment where we make lots of bad puns and dad jokes, and we chase rabbits and talk about like Book of Boba Fett and why that first episode was so bad, and you know, Westeros and time travel and basically anything that you can think of that ties in somehow, we'll bring it up. Why not? But tonight we're talking about Eastern Rome, and the people down here below me are currently ruling. We have the Empress Ariadne and the Emperor Anastasius. They're a married couple. They are kind of running the Roman Empire right now. Let's see what we got. Oh, wow, that's delightful. There's some... I don't know if this is the case, but I just immediately upon seeing this, I'm feeling Water Tribe influence potentially, especially with the color palette. Oh, that's delightful, Nix. It's very nice. I like the outfit and the little. Is this a staff? Yeah, I should say staff. I was thinking wand, but it's too big to be a wand. Staff is very nice. I like the little intricacy up there. Very cool. And the old Twitteroo. Yeah. So go do the follows thing. Everybody go do the follows thing. Thank you for sharing. Ice magic user. Oh, very nice. Very good in the south during the summer. I wish I had ice magic. Because honestly, it's kind of hot down here. Anyway, so Anastasius took over, and when he took over as emperor, he wasn't very popular. So he gave a lot of people tax breaks. And it turns out that people are more willing to pay stuff like $1 in taxes than they are $100 in taxes. So this actually is going to encourage more people to be involved, and it actually does kind of make some money. It's a weird little trick of not beating people over the head with taxes. But we're going to get into stuff that I should probably not run my mouth about tonight. Okay, so here's the thing. One of the people that did not like the choice of Anastasius was Zeno's brother. So for those of you that just came in on the raid, Zeno was the previous emperor. He died, and his wife, Ariadne, chose Anastasius to marry, and then Anastasius became emperor. But Zeno had a brother whose name was Longinus. And Longinus sort of thought like he should have been emperor, right? Because my brother was emperor, he died, I should be emperor, I should marry his wife, and I should be involved. Well, Ariadne didn't really like this guy, and he had a very hot temper to begin with. So in 492, there's going to be a big rebellion in a region called Isauria, which is sort of the central and western part of Turkey, right around in here. And the Isaurians were a region, Zeno was an Isaurian himself, and Longinus is going to call together some Roman soldiers and start a rebellion over here. And this lasts from 492 to 497. And Anastasius is going to have to spend a lot of time trying to track this guy down, his army down. And he's trying also not to kill all of his own soldiers because, again, at the end of the day, when Anastasius becomes emperor again, these are his own troops, right? So you don't want to just like demolish them. You'd rather catch Longinus and put him in jail or put him on trial and kill him or whatever. But this is going to end up with a pretty unpopular decision. When Longinus is brought to justice, Anastasius decides that what needs to happen is to break up his army and scatter them out. So one of the things that happened in the Roman territories were you would get put in a unit with people that were more or less in your area. So you'd have a unit of Isaurian troops, and there'd be like an Isaurian legion. Now you might get sent to the border somewhere else, but you would be fighting with your Isaurian people from your area. So this is sort of like, the Mississippi Army or the Alabama Army or the New York Army fighting for the United States. We might get sent somewhere else, but we would all be sort of together with our troops. Well, Anastasius decides to disband that legion and scatter those troops out through all sorts of different areas to keep them from rebelling again. And that was a smart move, tactically speaking, here, because that meant that they would be less likely to be able to, join up together in rebellion again. But it also sent kind of a weird message, and that being, Anastasius might break you up if you don't do exactly what he wants you to do. And one of the things that these soldiers that were out on the border really appreciated was kind of having the camaraderie of people that were like them when they were stationed out in the middle of nowhere. So if he's willing to break up legions and scatter people and make these kind of hodgepodge units, I don't know if I really want to like that guy or not, So, interesting stuff. Who died and made you emperor? Zeno. Oh, you live in Miami. Oh, Nix. I'm sorry. Oh, you're disappointed that his brother's name wasn't Zayas. I see what you did there. Yeah, I see what you did there. Nick's a raid. Hey, Lightblades, welcome in. You think Florida is pretty nice this time of the year? Just not summer. I'd die. Yeah, I don't like the heat. It's not my thing. Kind of tempted to mention Evangelion because of the Lance of Longinus. Yeah, that comes from mythological, I guess, interpretation or story of the lance that pierced Christ's side. So while he's hanging on the cross, a Roman soldier stabbed him in the side, and that lance was given the name Longinus and is supposedly imbued with magical powers. It's also sometimes referred to as the Spear of Destiny, and there are like 5 of them floating around out there, and everybody claims to have the authentic one. But that's where they got that from in Evangelion. So, double history and nerd combination. Boom. It's all levels, right? Anyway, so he breaks this army up, and this is kind of a weird thing to do, but it makes sense logically. But Anastasius is going to kind of start turning things around a bit. Is it Longinus or lozenge? Lozenge is the mythical thing that gets rid of your cough. It was the sponge that they gave Jesus mixed wine vinegar on. That's the sponge of lozenge. Was the pick of destiny poked against Jesus too? No, that's Tenacious D, and it's hilarious. You left the room for 30 seconds and you missed the Evo reference. I'm sorry, Schneegel. We were talking about the Lance of Longinus. So there we go. Okay, so Anastasius is going to kind of start turning things around a little bit, and we'll pick up with him next time we come around in next phase. You just want to be a nerd. It's okay, good. It's okay. You do your thing, man. We celebrate all types here, right? So what does Rome look like? Well, pretty much this now. We've got the East, and here's Odoacer's kingdom of Italy, and all of this other stuff is barbarian stuff. And we'll look a little bit more at that in detail a little bit later on, because one of the streams that's going to happen eventually is here are all of these barbarian groups that end up forming countries, because a lot of those countries go on to be modern countries. Like, here are the Franks. And you're like, wait, that sounds familiar. Yeah, because that's where the Kingdom of France comes from. So, yeah, they start off as barbarians, and this guy named Clovis, and we'll talk about all those people later on. But for the moment, that is all that I had planned for tonight. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to run away. Of course, we can hang around, we can ask questions. If you want to bring up any more information, you're welcome to do your thing. Throw that stuff in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them at my ability. You can also redeem some channel points. We are currently running a community goal for a photo stream. So a stream where I basically just get on stream, and for a couple hours I just show photos and talk about stuff that I've seen on my various travels. So if you want to donate to that, please feel free to do so. There is a limit of 2,000 points per stream. But if you've got lots of points sitting around and you want to donate towards that, please feel free. I like giving you all stuff to use your points on. I don't like just making sure everybody has a bajillion points just sitting on top of it. I figure it's a common thing for many of us. Yeah, I think everybody has a nerd thing, right? Everybody has something that is their nerd thing, right? And even jocks are just sports nerds. You know, I know the batting average of every person on the Toronto Blue Jays or something like that. That's a sports nerd, right? I know how many rebounds this person got in every game of the series. This is sports nerd, right? Okay, so Nix has redeemed the standard question book, which is this thing. Bum, ba, da, bum. Standard question book and home study outlines. I feel like I need to make some sort of introduction that I can play for this. This is an antique book. It's a study guide for a home history college course. You would mail into the college, sign up for the class. They would send you all of the books. This was one of the books. This was the study guide. I don't have any of the other books. All I have is the questions. And they have references to pages in the book that I don't have. But it's really just a whole bunch of questions. It's a whole bunch of random weird questions about anything history. So here we go. And what we do is we sort of find a random page. Like, I don't know, let's go right here. Yeah, right here looks good. And then I kind of just put well, we did that side by side. Let's go this side. And I'm just going to kind of move my finger to, I don't know, this one. And then I'm going to read the question. And if I know the answer to it, I'll tell you the answer. And if I don't, we'll go look it up. So the question is, by whom was the cotton gin invented? And the cotton gin was invented by a guy named Eli Whitney. And for those of you that don't know what cotton gin is, a cotton gin is a device that pulls the seeds out of cotton bolls. So when you grow cotton, it grows in this sort of thing called a boll. And when you pick it, you have to sort of pull it out from these little prongy parts of the boll. And inside of it, there are seeds. And the seeds are kind of like plants cemented into the cotton fibers. And you have to pick them out by hand, right? So you would normally have to go pick them out by hand, and this is, of course, stuff that would be done by slave labor. And the cotton gin was an automated version where you would dump the cotton in, and it would pull the cotton through various rotary hooks that would pull the fibers away from the seeds and spit the seeds out the bottom. And this could be either turned by a slave but manually, or some of them were large enough that it could be turned by a water wheel, or sometimes turned by like a mule that would walk around in circles turning the gin. So this rapidly became a very, very popular device, and it led to the exponential growth of cotton as a domestic export from the United States, especially from the South, because you could make just so much more of it because it became less labor intensive. So there we go. Learned anything new about the Ukraine today? Seems like it was more of the same today. So this is what's in the news. I have not learned anything specific about the Ukraine today, except for the fact that the Russians seem to be sending a rather large convoy of armored vehicles towards Kiev, which is not particularly hopeful. We do know that the Russians, over the course of the last couple of days, have started focusing on... There was an initial push at Kiev about 3 days ago that did not go so well, and this sort of forced the Russian forces 2 days ago to start moving out and targeting different cities in Ukraine, especially not the capital. And there has been some shelling that has intensified against some of the larger cities that aren't the capital. But there does appear to be a fairly big column of troops and armor headed towards Kiev. So that looks like something that's going to come to head pretty soon. You subscribe to the Will Wheaton definition of nerd. You're a raging weeb and you make no excuses. Hey, Atuna, what's up? Ironically, the inventor of the cotton gin thought it would reduce the need for slave labor. You're talking about me, nice goatee? I need to actually trim it. It's getting long. Yeah, I need to trim it. You think you've cottoned on. You have a time machine. You can go back to 2 dates. One merely to observe, one to change something. Oh my gosh, that's impossible to know. I don't know, man. That's way too much. That's way too much. The one point out of history, there's too many things. I can't pick one. I would just as soon pick something that was really close to me. I'd really like to know with whom. I don't even know if I want to go that far. I don't know, man. That's crazy. No. That won't keep me awake. I think about that junk all the time anyway. If I had to change one thing, I might. If I could change one thing, I would ask my wife out earlier than I did, because I knew Brittany for about 3 years before I asked her out. And if I could change one thing, I would go ask her out earlier so that I could have spent more time with her. Because I was smitten from like the get-go. Yes, so Ukraine has applied to join the European Union. Yeah, there's been a lot of like, you can't do things anymore with Russia. Like Pornhub shut off porn to Russia. So I don't know if that's a substantive sanction or not. I have been in discussion with friends, and I might, if I can find time to put the stream together, I might do some sort of like special what the devil is actually going on with Ukraine historically stream. I feel like that got some positive traction, and I think that it is a timely thing that I could offer some viewpoints on. So if I can find time in the next week or so, I might do a special like history of Ukraine and Russian relations stream to try to clarify some of the craziness that's going on and explain that this is not something that just sort of happened out of nowhere. So there's that. Also, before we go, I need to share some stuff. So if you all know this, I am a fan of art, and I know a lot of really amazing and really talented artists. And I was fortunate enough to find some money for Christmas presents. And I want to share with you some of the art that I got. Well, a piece of art that I got for Brittany as a Christmas present, and then a piece of art that I won, which was completely crazy and lucky. So first off, I will give this person a shout out. Okay, so the artist in question here is the Twitch channel that they use is called Nevermore Nest. The artist goes by the name Vid or Video Kid, but that used to be the old name. They changed their name to Nevermore Nest to try to get branding across the board with stuff like Twitter and Instagram so that they could all have, Nevermore Nest. But Vid is a great artist and is an amazing watercolorist and does some digital art, but mostly traditional stuff. And I was able to get from them this little guy. So this is a Eurasian bullfinch, and it is one of my wife's favorite birds. For those of you that don't know, my wife is a very active birder. She's a big fan of ornithology, and I have been converted to the ways. To me, bird watching is sort of like live action Pokemon almost. You get to go see everything. But this has just such amazing detail. You can see here when I zoom in, like all these little feathers are lined out. So much crazy good detail here, like even with the little feet. So I did want to show this off because Vid is an amazing artist and does commissions. And if you want something like this, go give Vid a follow at Nevermore Nest and get some of their art, because it's good to support people that do amazing stuff. So there you go. So I did want to share that. If I can get this back in the plastic. And I had meant to actually share these last week on Tuesday, but then I forgot to, and, well, life. You watch a cardinal slam into your window all day long. There's your time machine observation. Take Brittany back to the go dinosaur watching. Yeah, because, we all know that dinosaurs are birds. Danny tells us that all the time, right? So let me give another shout out to Kay. Let me make sure that this works. Does that work? Yes. So Kay Nyman is an artist here on Twitch, one of my favorite channels to hang out in. And Kay was doing some stuff for the new year and just said that she was going to try some new techniques and wanted to do some stuff with some new pins that she had and wanted to give away a piece of art for the new year. So I entered the raffle and I won the raffle. And I got to pick sort of the topic, and I knew that Kay was very fond of skulls and horns and stuff. So I picked this particular skull, and this is the art that I won from Kay. And just as a piece by itself, it's pretty stunning. But when you start looking at like all of the tiny little details with this tiny, tiny, tiny little pen marks in here, you can see how much love and work went into this and how much detail is there and how friggin' cool this is. So this is, again, Kay Nyman, who is a great streamer, a delightful person to chat with, and Vid as well, by the way. I don't know if I said that about Vid, but I definitely want to make sure that I did. But anyway, so I won this, and I figured the least that I could do is hopefully send some eyeballs in Kay's direction. Give Kay a follow, and if you find yourself with some money, Kay does have an online store where she sells some of her originals for a lot less money than she should. You can get original art from her for 25, 30, 50 bucks. It's crazy how cheap you can get her art. Go get it now while it's cheap before she blows up, and help her blow up along the way. Anyway, she's a great person. Both of these artists are amazing. I give them super props up. Everybody go give them eyeballs. And hopefully that will help them out in the long run. So any other questions or any other kind of ideas or things that we need to talk about or things to consider or questions to ask? Otherwise, we might start looking for someone to raid. Fogage, we did one for Ukraine, but if you've got something other than Ukraine that you want to ask about, you're welcome to go for it. I always got time for the news. I always have time for the news. And I guess if you have a specific question about the Ukraine that wasn't what we already talked about, I could talk about that too. Do you have a specific question about Ukraine, like what's going on with this? Because the last question was just like, you know, what's up with the Ukraine? Oh, here's something else about the Ukraine that I saw yesterday. It's actually a fairly interesting tactic that I saw. Okay, so yesterday there was a United Nations emergency meeting for the situation in the Ukraine. And the Ukrainian ambassador got up to speak and gave a really good speech. You could tell English was not the ambassador's first language, but you understand what the ambassador is trying to get across here. Read some letters from a Russian soldier to his mother that was really moving. Basically, like, I don't want to be here. I don't know why we're doing this. We were told that we were going to be, you know, saviors of these people, and they hate us. They're trying to kill us. Invasion of Ukraine versus invasion of Iraq in terms of presentation and propaganda internal to the invading country. If that question works, you'll redeem it. I think Moose may have already just redeemed it for you, but that's okay. Yeah, I can speak to that. I'll get through kind of the thing that I'm saying right now, and then I'll get to that. So one of the things that the ambassador started talking about at the very end of his speech was the Russian United Nations ambassador vetoing the Security Council resolution condemning Russia. Right? You know, the United Nations Security Council had a vote on whether or not to condemn Russia. And of course, because Russia sits on the Security Council and has a veto, Russia vetoed it. No duh. But there's actually some really interesting political theater here going on. Yeah. So there is no purgatory. That was a pretty powerful statement too. The Ukrainian ambassador knows what he's doing. He's a smart dude, and has a good team of people around him. So at the end of this speech, the Ukrainian ambassador is like, of course Russia's going to veto any of these things. And then Russia went on to say, well, clearly it's not so bad because the Security Council couldn't get a unified vote. And he's like, you're hypocritical. You're the one that caused the vote to fail. You can't then go run around and claim that this was the reason you got to do whatever you want to, because you're the one that stopped it. Anyway, but the very end of that speech was really, really clever, because here's the thing. So when the Charter of the United Nations was written, a permanent seat on the Security Council was given to, specifically here, the USSR, the United Soviet Socialist Republics. And the USSR got to choose the representative. And because Russia was the largest of the countries in the USSR, it was always a Russian. And the Ukrainian ambassador brought up an interesting argument here. He looked out to all of the other assembled countries and he said, I would like to ask all of you to raise your hand if your country voted to allow the Russian Federation to join the United Nations. And nobody could, because nobody voted for the Russian Federation to enter the United Nations. Because in 1991, when the USSR fell apart, Boris Yeltsin, the guy who was in charge of Russia, basically wrote a letter to the United Nations saying Russia would like to be let in, and we would like the same treatment given to us as the USSR. And at that point, the prevailing person that was over the United Nations General Assembly just said, yeah, okay, fine. So there was never technically a vote to allow Russia onto the United Nations in the first place. So the Russian Federation here is not technically the same as the United Soviet Socialist Republics. And then one step further, he said, well, if there is no reason for Russia to be in the United Nations because they've never applied, why does Russia still have a veto on the Security Council? Because they shouldn't even be in the UN in the first place. This is really, really interesting political theater here. Now, he did not come up with this idea by himself. This is an idea that has sort of come up a couple of times over the course of the late 90s and early 2000s. But it's a really interesting angle to take. And the timing is perfect here. If there are enough people that are swayed by the technical truth or the technical merit of this argument, it might be that Russia has to apply for UN membership again. And at that point, they would clearly get kicked out of the Security Council, which, China would then veto in their position. But, yeah, see, that's the thing. Ukraine has already applied to the United Nations as Ukraine. So it couldn't just jump in there. Yeah, we've all been quoting that particular technically correct is the best kind of correct. That is one of Mack and Labcoat's favorite statements ever. So we have seen that one already. Russia jumped in there. Why can't Ukraine? Well, because the USSR doesn't exist anymore. So what about China? Did the UN vote to have PRC instead of ROC in the Security Council? That gets Taiwanish, and I don't have time to unpack all of that. The short answer is China is recognized as Beijing by the United Nations and not Taiwan. And they saw that not as a change of country, but as a change of government in the same country. even though it's kind of not. But that gets really, really hairy and super political and based on a whole bunch of old racist ideas. Okay, so Fogish asks about how the propaganda in Russia about Ukraine is similar or not similar to the propaganda in America dealing with the invasion of Iraq. And there is some similarity here. This is not necessarily a false question or like a false premise just on the face of it. Because the idea here is that there was a government generated falsehood that was then used as a pretext for an invasion of another sovereign nation. The biggest difference here that I can point out is that there was evidence of the Iraqi government sponsoring certain separatist and radical Muslim terrorist organizations. Now, that was not the idea that was sold. The idea that was sold was they had weapons of mass destruction. And there's tangential evidence that they did, and we know that Saddam Hussein had used nerve gas against his own people. And we do know that at one point he had substantial reserves of nerve gas, but even that wasn't the weapons of mass destruction that were being talked about. They were mostly focusing on the fact that he might have had nuclear capabilities, which he clearly did not, and the evidence for that evidence was never really revealed to be particularly valid. So in one way, there was a bit more validity to America going to Iraq, but we're splitting hairs here. It is a fairly finite difference between the two. I would like to say that I hope the biggest difference as well is that George W. Bush was not a totalitarian psychopath hell-bent on having his way or the highway. There was some of that to be said, but I don't think that he was as evil to the core as Putin is. McKinnis 2024. I don't know, man. I don't know. First off, they would have to basically loophole me for a little bit because I would have to fill out the paperwork to qualify for president prior to being old enough to be president. So I'm currently only 38, but or would I be 41 at that point? 22. I turned 39. Okay, so I'd be fine. All right, I did my math wrong. I'm so bad at math. Listening to that last This American Life and the Russian lady spouting the government line. Okay, yes. So let's be clear here. The Russian propaganda is absolutely bullcrap. The stuff that they were claiming happening was stuff that they were actually doing themselves. They were faking the footage that they were using. The Russians were attempting in multiple ways to make false flag attacks against them. So it was a mess. It was a pretty bad thing. It is 35. I don't know why I thought it was 40 for some reason. Maybe it's because Kennedy was 40 and he was the youngest president. I don't know. America made a huge mistake by invading Iraq. Now Russia is just using whataboutism. Yeah, so technically speaking, there are some comparisons. Morally and ethically speaking, there are many, many fewer comparisons. The biggest one, if you want to paint a broad stroke, is one country invaded another country. But there is evidence to show that the government of Iraq was harboring state terrorists that did directly assault the United States during the 9/11 attacks. There we go. So, imagine how strong the American moral position could be right now if there was never an invasion of Iraq. It wouldn't be any stronger or weaker. Our country has done horrible things in the past. That no country that lasts for longer than a month probably has clean hands. The whataboutism is all completely illogical as a rhetorical device because it implies that one country is somehow more morally strong than the another, when in reality, no government is really moral. This was something I was talking about in Steve's chat earlier. Basically, every president, except for maybe one or two that had short presidencies, could be prosecuted technically under the War Crimes Act of international law, especially the last several, very, very easily, for stuff like extrajudicial killings, because there's no governmental justification or laws or even military chains of command that functionally explain how drone strikes work legally. It's all just a fiction that the president can do whatever they want to when it comes to drone strikes, including blow up civilians, which is a mess, right? No country is perfect. However, in this situation, Putin is obviously and clearly wrong. The entire invasion of the Ukraine was a fabrication. He is a horrible, horrible person. Nothing that he says as justification is logically justifiable, morally justifiable, or ethically justifiable. He's a bad person. And he makes decisions that are getting innocent people killed, including his own people. So while we can play the comparison game all day long, eventually we're going to get back to the fact that right now, in this instance, if we're looking at the argument of whether or not Putin invading the Ukraine is justifiable, it isn't. Is Putin invading the Ukraine ethical? It's not. Is it morally right? No, it's not. There's no way to justify it. There really isn't. That's a Noam Chomsky quote. If the Nuremberg laws were applied, then every post-war American president would have been hanged. I did not know that was a Noam Chomsky quote, but it makes sense. So, okie dokie. Other questions or topics of discussion? I do not mind. Otherwise, we can start looking at somebody to go raid. We might raid somebody. Bring our eyeballs to somebody else's chat and see what they up to. Putin equals bad, and if anybody tries to tell you differently, they're probably eating the wrong breakfast cereal, and they're definitely drinking the Kool-Aid. Summon the opinion hat. Oh, okay. Here we go. Well, we got an opinion hat summoning, so we can't go away quite yet. You want an opinion on the puppy? I didn't really want the dog. It brings my wife a lot of joy. There have been a few occasions where I have been pretty low emotionally, where the dog has offered substantial emotional support. I don't like having to clean up after the dog. The dog sheds everywhere and has a never-ending pile of fluffle that sort of floats around her like Pigpen. But she's a good dog. I have had worse dogs, and I have seen many, many worse dogs. And in the scheme of things, the Kaylee is like easily top quarter of all of the dogs that I've ever been around. So there's the opinion on the puppy. I love that the opinion hat is a drunk Irishman at the pub hat. That's that's kind of the joke. Plus, it just makes me look like I know what I'm talking about, right? Oh, you want me to call the puppy? Okay, let me call the puppy. She's actually been kind of out of it today. She hasn't eaten breakfast or dinner, so it might take me a little while to get her to come and see me. So let me give her a call. Kaylee! She's actually coming quite quickly. Oh, hello. Hello. You want to come and see me? Here, let me put this toy up here. Come here. Come on. Oh, yes, there's the puppy. Hello, puppy. What are you doing? Ready to toy? Arr, arr, arr. What are you doing? Arr. Arr. Oh, so vicious. You want to play with it? This used to have a squeaker in it, but it has been demolished, and the squeaker has been ripped out. Arr. Arr. Oh, so vicious. The puppy is so mean. You want to catch it? Ready? Oh, ho, ho, that was a good catch. That was a good catch. Arr. Oh, are you mad that I took it from you? She gets ticked off that I take her toy, and then when she gets it back, she just leaves. Oh, Cryo! Oh my goodness! Hey, how's it going? Would you add a Maple Mystery to your raid list? They're a lovely game dev streamer. Perhaps. I'd have to go check them out first. I don't necessarily like blind rating. Not that I don't think that this person is an amazing person. I just don't know them very much. I will tell you who is an amazing person, though. And that is my friend Cryomera. If you do not already follow Cryomera, you really should go follow Cryomera. Now that so Cryo is celebrating her 2-year streamiversary yesterday and today, and I was trying to be like concise and to the point in her chat the other day because I didn't want to like soppy goopy wall of text Cryo in her chat. But for real, I started doing Twitch purely because of David Peterson, and he was the only person that I went to Twitch for about a year and a half. Just like it was David TV. And by the way, I saw David in the chat. Let me give him a shout out too. David is a great Twitch streamer. And it was David TV for me for a long time. And one day, just because of some raids, it was like, here's Cryomera. And I had seen the little channels, like, you log into Twitch and it tells you, like, you would like these people, you should go check these people out. And the second Twitch room that I ever went to, period, was Cryo's art stream. And it was like, holy crap, why did I not do this earlier? Because Cryo's amazing and is super positive and is always uplifting and has the same weird kind of sense of humor that I do and is an amazing artist and was like super influential in even getting me to the point that I was like even halfway likely to try to do streaming as a thing. The biggest reason why I build models is because of Cryo and another guy named Crush. I owe a lot to the support of Cryo and David. These are both people that have just been great supporters to me. But like the biggest raids that I've ever had are Cryo. The people that overlap my stream and her stream on the little twitchy analog stuff that you can look at is always super big. Cryo, you're amazing. And I'm really glad that I got out into the Twitch world and found cool people like you. So congratulations and happy 2-year streamiversary. And keep doing what you're doing because it's great. That's what all your dog squeaker toys end up looking like. Yeah, just like ripped open. Gotta just like, no take, only throw. Hey, Kelly, good to see you. Indeed, amazing piece. No. Cryo deserves it. She's cool people. You should go give her a follow. And David too. Ditto David being the only reason you got on Twitch. Yeah, Schnagel, it's amazing. Like the community that David has put together is an amazing one that has all sorts of people from all over the world. And I did not know that there were other communities like that outside of like David's fan base, because I've been following David's art and comics like just about since Fall first came out, way back in the day. We pressured him. Cryo, thank you so much. Oh, the Snocks. You only know Shane? Yeah, and like Kyle and people like Joey and uh, I know Daria because of David, and that's how Foggage got in here because Foggage was hanging out in Daria's channel, and it's just so great. Like, first off, I am not an artist, right? I'm just like not an artist when it comes to drawing. But it's really amazing how cool Art Twitch is when you start looking at the social network of people that are interested in the same kind of things and how it all just like ends up blending all together like that. You watched Mike Shinoda? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and Mike Shinoda like raids Cryo. Right? And it's crazy. It's crazy. Cryo was sporting pink glittery hat yesterday? Yeah. You're sure you only found this channel because of Cryo? All right, and see, here's Batbird, right? And it's all weird how like these are kind of like my, and I know that I'm younger than David, but I'm pretty sure that I'm older than Cryo. But they're almost like Twitch parents. It's like the people that got me into it, and they're like the big family communities that have all of these other communities attached to them, and it's just really amazing. And Art Twitch is love, and I really appreciate all of you. And I have some really tough days at work sometimes, and I'll get on or I'll get in the car coming home, and I'm just like, man, I want to go and sleep and hide in a hole and like not be social or not talk about anything. And my wife will even be like, "Are you okay? Are you having a like, are you gonna make it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be okay. It's just a crappy day." And I'm like, I don't even feel like streaming. I'll be honest. When I got done eating today, I was kind of like done. It's been a tough day and had to do a lot of like really drudge kind of work this morning, and I just really didn't feel it. But I make myself come on stream because I know that you all make me feel better, and it's a very reciprocal feeling where I'm glad that you all are here, and I'm definitely glad that I get to hang around you all because it's definitely an uplifting experience every time I get to come stream. You didn't know there was an art side of Twitch or anything beside gaming, right? Art Twitch is heart. Absolutely. Oh, and Becca. Oh yeah, Becca. I love Becca. I'm glad that she's gonna do well because these folks will punch you with love. Yes. Yes. Just punch people with love. I'm gonna punch you with love. All right. Let's go take some of our love to another stream. I think that we're going to go. Oh no, did I miss my opportunity? Oh crap. Well, okay, so I'll just give this guy a shout out because I was going to raid him, and I talked too long and I missed my chance. But I'll give him a shout out anyway. If you like watching game streamers, go follow my friend Angel, who is a game streamer. We were going to raid him, but it looks like I have missed my window to raid. He's a cool guy. I don't wait. Is he still streaming? Am I just not hitting? No, he's not still streaming. Twitch, what are you doing? Go home, Twitch. You're drunk. There we go. Anyway, he was streaming. I missed it. It didn't happen, but that's okay. Let's go raid another one of our friends here. We're going to go raid JMR, who is also a game streamer and a very frequent member of the chat here. JMR, his channel is called The Gaming Fort, and he's a pretty cool dude and is currently playing Halo. I hang out in JMR's channel on the weekends because to me it's like getting up and playing video games in the morning on Saturday. He's been playing Breath of the Wild on Saturdays, which is like, I love that game anyway. And I've kind of wanted to play it again, so I kind of get the contact high from JMR. But he's a cool dude, and we're going to go give him some love. Our battle cry is adventure, and if you have those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those in the chat. Put on the adventure hat for just good luck. But thank you all for hanging out. I really do appreciate it. Thanks, Steve, for the big raid. Nix, thanks for raiding in. Thanks everybody for hanging out. You'll next see me Thursday night, 1900 Central Standard Time. We'll be talking about what's going on in the western part of the Roman Empire. So kind of like the rest of the story. And it's the Walterverse. Oh my gosh. Quickly before we raid. Go follow the Walterverse, who is an amazing streamer. He wears a top-up three-piece suit. He's a great dude, really talented, really individual. I need to talk to this guy about how to do transitions and scenes inside of OBS because I can't do it very well. Go follow that guy. He's amazing. Also, I love you all. Thanks so much for hanging out. You're awesome people. Let's go give some raid to JMR, show him some love, and I will see you all on Thursday. Thanks so much. Take it easy, and adios.